Thank you for being here. It's great to be here in San Francisco. This area is extremely important to the university. There are 6,000 Carnegie Mellon alumni in the Bay Area. Enough so that we have 2 alumni chapters, the San Francisco alumni chapter and the Silicon Valley alumni chapter. We have 6 trustees from this area. Almost all alumni, and the one that isn't is a parent. And so it's been important for a long time, but it's at an all-time high in terms of importance of the university. We'll get into the topic which attracted you here, the future of higher education, but I can't resist on this, my last trip to San Francisco as president of Carnegie Mellon, to give you a quick update and sort of recap on the university during my time as president. It's doing very well. We feel very good about the university, at least I do, Mark does, and most people do, and which is exactly the right time to be handing over the reins of the university. And when I say we're doing well, this is with regard to virtually every dimension. With regard to student interest and demand for Carnegie Mellon, we're just now going through the end of the admissions process for next year. Letters are being sent out actually tomorrow. We've got about 20,000 applications for 1,400 spaces in the freshman class, which is an all-time high program record. I think every year during our presidency just keeps going up and up. It's not only a big applicant pool, it's an extraordinary applicant quality. And it's very reaffirming about the interest in Carnegie Mellon, the standing of Carnegie Mellon. Our research activities are hitting on all cylinders. Our sponsored research is also at an all-time high, about $400 million a year, mostly from the federal government. Many new research thrusts, certainly during our time leading the university. The biggest change and the biggest gain has been in the life sciences, where we've doubled the faculty, tripled our funding, and other great things. The newest major thrust is in energy. We launched last fall the Scott Institute for Energy Innovation, made possible by a very large gift by Joyce Bowie Scott, an alumna and member of our board of trustees, and her husband Sherman Scott, also an alumnus. This is a very important new thrust in the university. Virtually every research university in the country is working on energy, and that's a good thing because we have a lot of energy challenges. And Carnegie Mellon brings a particular take on energy problems where we can make special contributions. And I'm talking about our extraordinary ability to work at the intersection of technology and policy, which is something that we really need in this country and globally. And many other research areas, of course. Computer science, information technology, just booming ahead. I can talk about that all night. I'm not going to do that. Another area that we've heard a lot about is how global Carnegie Mellon has become. We now offer, I believe it's 15 degrees in 14 countries, 14 and 15 countries, something like that. And we had none of that just 10 years ago. The Silicon Valley campus, which you heard mention of, is doing very well, as are our campuses in Qatar and Australia, major programs in Portugal and Singapore, new ones we're launching this year in China and India. And last fall, we started a program in Rwanda in Africa, which is going extremely well. We're very pleased about this. A great thing for the university now, and even more so, I think, in the future. An area which has been a priority for the university during our time has been Pittsburgh and its economic development. And here we've seen tremendous gains. We radically changed our technology transfer policy several years ago, thanks to Mark's leadership, creating a policy which makes it much easier and faster for faculty to start companies. We went from spinning out 2 to 5 companies a year to now 15 to 20 a year. We are second in the country in terms of number of companies created per dollar of sponsored research. This has been great for the university. It's been great for Pittsburgh. Another thing we did was to build a building on the edge of campus. And if you haven't been back to campus in a few years, you've got to come back. There have been fabulous changes. This building was built specifically to attract established technology companies. It's been extremely successful. It opened its doors 6 years ago with Apple, Intel, and Google. Google got too big and had to move out. And they now have 200 people in an engineering center in East Liberty. Now, when I go around the world and say to Carnegie Mellon alumni, I've not been back to Pittsburgh in a long time, Google is in East Liberty, they gasp. We didn't want to see Google move out. We're delighted to have them that big in Pittsburgh. But we didn't feel too bad because Disney moved in after them into their space. A major Disney research center on our campus. This has been a terrific thing for the university and the city. Related to this has not only been our change in tech transfer policy, but a strong new emphasis on innovation, entrepreneurship, from an educational point of view, and a practice point of view. We've gotten major gifts in this area. This is something that's really booming on campus and in the city. And I should add, the University of Pittsburgh has been a very close and strong partner of ours in this. The collaboration between the two universities has been just terrific. Our capital campaign has been extremely successful. We have raised to date $1.180 billion. Our goal was $1 billion, so we're well past that. The campaign will end when my presidency does on June 30th, so it's not too late. You can add to that total. The money, of course, has been very important, and we've been very pleased by the success of it in that regard. But it's also been about alumni engagement. That was an explicit goal of this campaign, to greatly increase our engagement with alumni. And that has been a tremendous success. I mean, the turnout tonight is a testament to that. We've tripled the number of alumni chapters around the world. International alumni chapters went from 2 to 22 in the course of this campaign. It's just been terrific. And not just the number of chapters, but the degree of engagement, the enthusiasm of alumni. That's a great thing for the university. This campaign's also been about building what we call an advancement infrastructure. By advancement, we use that word to refer to alumni relations, fundraising, and marketing. And we have today an infrastructure, a group of people like Andy and his many colleagues who are here tonight, the sort that we simply never had before, not even close in the history of the university. That's a permanent gain. It wasn't just for the campaign. And it's something that's extremely important for the future of the university. So that's been a great success. Finally, we have a great new president now. On July 1st, I'll be succeeded by Subra Suresh. Dr. Suresh is from India, went to IIT Madras, Chennai, got his PhD at MIT, taught at Brown for many years before he returned to MIT to take up a faculty position in materials science, became the dean at MIT, and then director of the National Science Foundation, where he is now. Tomorrow is his last day in NSF. And he will, in the next 3 months, be working closely with us as we effect a smooth transition. Very, very prominent guy. Just his appointment was a boost for the university, its profile and reputation. We got a lot of play in the press, as it deserved, I think. And we should all feel very good that we're able to attract someone of Subra's caliber. He'll be a great president. So, with that, let me turn to the topic that brought you here. Though when we get to Q&A, you can ask us about anything you expect when we're talking about this. The future of higher education. Mark and I know exactly what the future of higher education is going to be. That's why we call it short on Apollo. That was an inside higher education joke. Let me sort of set the stage for this and then pretty quickly turn it over to Mark, because he really is the expert, not just the Carnegie Mellon expert, a national and global expert, especially in the area of technology and education. This is an unusual moment for higher education in this country. On the one hand, there's a broad appreciation that higher education is more important than ever. If you want to get a good job, you've got to have a college degree or some kind of advanced education. There's a particular appreciation for research universities. It's important that we pause to make sure we're all on the same page here about the difference between research universities and the rest of higher education. So a research university, Carnegie Mellon, is an institution of higher education dedicated equally to the creation of knowledge and research as it is to the dissemination of knowledge and teaching. There are only about 250 research universities in America. There are about 4,500 institutions of higher education in America. Only about 250 or so that are research universities. And within that group, there are about 60 which dominate the rest. And Carnegie Mellon is one of those. The best way to sort of define that select group is by membership in an organization called the AAU. This is a collection of the top 60 research universities in America. Collectively, we conduct half of all of the basic research this country does, just these 60 universities. So it includes just the ones you'd expect, Stanford and Berkeley. In fact, there are like 6 of the UC campuses which are using this. In Pennsylvania, Carnegie Mellon, Pitt, Penn State, and Penn, etc. So it's that collection. There's a realization that those universities, these research universities, are especially important for the future of this country. We are a major reason for the economic success of this country, and we would claim the national security of this country over the last 60 years. And modestly spoken, we are the future of the country. There's an appreciation that what research universities do, because of the innovation that we create, because of the people that we train, who are the innovators, we are the key to the future. There's not only an appreciation for that in this country, too often it's forgotten, but every country in the world is trying to create a system of research universities based on the American model. And we know that because we're always getting called from these other countries. That's why we're in 15 countries today, 14, whatever the number is. So, on the one hand, and the upside, we are as important as we ever have been, and we're in as great demand as we ever have. On the other hand, our costs are too high, and we're viewed as inefficient and complacent and lazy when it comes to, and maybe fat and happy when it comes to the cost of higher ed. There's a feeling that the quality of education in institutions of higher education generally, not specifically a place like Carnegie Mellon, is inferior, and we're producing people who are not really what industry in America needs. There is a sense that, let me put it this way, there is sort of a backing off of the public commitment to higher education as a public good. We see this in the form of reduction of state appropriations to their flagship public universities. There's no better example of that than California, which saw many, many years of reductions in funding for the UC system, recently reversed, thankfully. We've seen it in Pennsylvania recently, where our new governor wanted to cut appropriations to the state universities by 50% in his first year as governor. 50% in 1 year. He didn't do it. It turned out to be only 19%. That's a huge decrease in 1 year. And this is a national phenomenon spawned by the budget problems that every state is facing. Fueled by this sort of belief that somehow our universities don't deserve that kind of state support that they used to. This is just, of course, added to the problem with regard to a high cost that's experienced by middle-class families. The biggest problem with high cost is the increases in tuition in public universities. Why have their tuitions gone up so much? Because their state support has gone down so much. It's really created a very difficult situation, both for universities and for families. And then finally, in terms of disruptive issues in higher ed, we have technology in higher education, online education. It is sweeping at least discussions in higher ed, and it's being rapidly adopted in various ways, and that's what we'll talk most of the rest of the evening about. There's a sense that traditional universities, like all of us, including Carnegie Mellon, are kind of like Detroit automakers in the 1970s, complacent, unable to change, and we're going to be put out of business by people who get it, by adopting online education. Or maybe more like buggy manufacturers. I don't think it's that extreme, and we'll talk through that before, but online education is really sweeping the sector. So let me turn now to really setting by talking a little bit about Carnegie Mellon against all of these factors, and in particular this issue of online education, technology education. You've all heard of MOOCs. You may not remember what it stands for. It's Massive Open Online Course, MOOC, and pioneered at Stanford, and now being distributed by a company called Coursera, founded by a couple of Stanford faculty members, one of whom is the Carnegie Mellon alumnus. We finally get successful at Ask Game. Let's not forget that. MOOCs have sort of really captured the imagination of the public. And I have to say, a lot of university presidents who are desperate to do something in online education, so they throw it into Coursera and said, please take our courses and make them into MOOCs. Carnegie Mellon is known as the, we've been called the MOOC-averse university. We like to think of ourselves as the post-MOOC university. And we'll try to explain that. And the reason why we are MOOCless, or MOOC-averse, or post-MOOC, is because we've been at this being technology in education, for 5 decades. We've been working on this ever since Simon and Newell. The learning as a cognitive process and as something worthy of our research and focus has been with us all the way back to the 60s. And it's evolved, and in fact, Carnegie Mellon has produced what we think, in fact, don't take it from us, take it from every other university that knows anything about this, have produced the best platform available today for technology and education, which we will elaborate on. For us, it's a serious undertaking. It's not about MOOCs, which is kind of a stunt that is taking videos of the professor, allowing 100,000 students to sign up for it. That's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing about access, but we're not so sure about the quality of the educational experience or the students are going to have. What we have done In fact, our motivation entirely is about learning, not about distributing necessarily or about being online. It's about how can technology improve education, improve the learning experience for our students. This gave rise to a lot of things. For one, we've got something called the Science of Learning Center. This fall, we're launching the world's first Masters of Learning Science program. You have to wonder, where are the people that come from that can implement online education, technology education? We're going to be the source of them in the first instance. It led to the creation of something called cognitive tutors, which we've been distributing now for 15 years, longer now. And now are used in more than 10% of the school systems, K through 12 school systems in America. It's led to something that we call OLI, that's our college level cognitive tutors, in a way that's not doing it justice, which create a very rich, interactive, computer-based environment for full semester-long courses. I'll leave you with one thing before I turn it to Mark. None of these online education things have been tested in any rigorous way. Basically ask the question, are students really learning anything? Except for one, ours. And they stood up very well in an independent test done by a third party that we had nothing to do with. Students learned using our OLI platform as well as students in a traditional class setting. That's significant. In our own research on a statistics course that we offered through OLI, our own students did as well or better than the students in the traditional course, but they completed it in half the time. As well or better in half the time. So that's exactly getting to the heart of what everybody's worried about. How do we contain costs, etc. But as well or better in half the time. And here's the kicker. Post-testing, 4 months later, 6 months later, 4 months later, the OLI students retained the information better than students in the traditional course. So this stuff is real. It's a game changer. It's something we're proud of. With that, I've simply sort of touched on the surface. Mark's going to answer all of your questions about the future of higher education. And let me say again, everything that's happened in Carnegie Mellon that's good during my presidency, Mark has either led or had his fingerprints on it. He's been a tremendous provost, and I can't thank you enough for doing this stuff. Mark, take it away. I'm going to try this.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Thank you. I'll try this way without the mic. If I start to get too soft, or you want to, okay, there's somebody who controls the volume. Just wave or something, this gets too. Okay. So I was walking in, got a chance to talk to just one or two people. We were running late, and the first thing they said is, I have no idea what a provost is. I'm not going to really explain it in much detail, but I will tell you, and this is true, provost comes from a German word, means jail keeper. And, I've been that now for a long time. There's actually a character in a Shakespeare play that's the provost. He's literally the keeper of the keys to the jail. So what I want to do is pick up on the themes that Jerry has introduced. And I want to talk, at least initially, about it from not necessarily the perspective right away of Carnegie Mellon. I want to step back. There's a lot of different kinds of institutions, higher education institutions in the United States. How many did you? 4,500. We're a member, as Jerry said, of this very select group of 60 research universities. But I want to make comments that pertain to this group of 60, but that really pertain to higher education in America, and then kind of zone in on what we're doing, what we hope to be doing. It is the case that higher education in the United States is between a rock and a hard place in a very challenging time, maybe more challenging than any time since World War II. There's one fundamental aspect. Costs keep going up. When costs keep going up, tuition keeps going up. As tuition keeps going up, financial aid does not keep up, although we're at CMU working very hard to make sure that our financial aid keeps up. But generally speaking, too many students end up getting too much in debt, have carried too many debts, and the situation is really not sustainable. Why do the costs keep going up? It's not mainly because provosts throughout all of these institutions are terrible at controlling costs, are terrible managers. There's something much more systematic going on. Sometimes it's a strange name, it's called Baumol's disease, named after someone named Baumol. And what it basically reflects is we have not improved in efficiency the way we teach and educate people in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. We do it largely the same way we always have done it. There's a teacher, a sage, there's students who listen and take notes on what the teacher says, and that's how it's done. At the same time, almost every other part of our economy has had tremendous productivity increases. You can now produce so much more steel or computing power or wheat with an hour of effort, but we don't have any improvement in the number of students that we educate effectively. And you do that for too long a period of time, your costs keep going up relative to all the rest of the things in the economy that are getting produced much more efficiently. That, in a nutshell, is Baumol's disease. It's something that is going to continue to pervade higher education until it changes. And it cannot stay the way it is. The cost structure just cannot keep going up forever. Now, there are other things that are going on, and as Jerry mentioned, there's a lot of lack of confidence that the taxpayer and the legislatures and the governors have in what particularly state institutions, public institutions are doing. And that's a factor as well, particularly for those institutions. But the dilemma that is being faced by higher education is one that is, it's not a matter of who's president, it's not a matter of who's in Congress, it's something that is not sustainable on its current course. What's going to happen? Nobody knows, but as Jerry mentioned, we believe strongly that the role of technology in changing the way that education is going to proceed is going to be a tremendous part of what's happening. So the question is, what is the role of Carnegie Mellon? Where does Carnegie Mellon fit in this? We believe that Carnegie Mellon is extraordinarily, uniquely situated to lead the transformation that's going to happen in higher education in the U.S. and globally to some degree. By that, I don't mean lead it in terms of what's going to happen on Carnegie Mellon's campus or campuses. Yes, we want to do that, and we will do that as well. But I mean something broader in leading the country, leading higher education broadly in the way it's going to have to respond over the next decade. Let me talk a little bit about what I'm speaking of in terms of what Carnegie Mellon has. Jerry mentioned we have been involved in our own very unusual way, at trying to understand education for 50 years plus. The two individuals mentioned, Herb Simon and Alan Newell. Who were they? They were psychologists who studied the brain, who studied the learning. So one of the great strengths that Carnegie Mellon has had is cognitive psychology. How people think, how people learn, not how they're supposed to learn, not guessing whether they learn from a lecture, but actually trying to study how people learn. And one of the things that comes out of that very long history of research in that area is the importance of active learning, the importance of learning by doing, the importance of student engagement. And all of those things may strike you as, aha, that's odd, because the way we normally teach a lot is through lectures. Lectures are in a lot of ways the antithesis of what we found out over the years makes it best for learning. Lectures are very passive. Lectures are somebody else talking and students passively taking notes and then being tested on the degree to which they somehow internally figured out and passed an exam. So that's part one of what CMU brings to the table. The other thing that Newell and Simon both were they were the inventors of the field of computer science. They were the inventors in particular of the field of artificial intelligence. And such an odd combination, cognitive psychology on the one hand, artificial intelligence on the other, but those have been the two pillars that Carnegie Mellon has used to approach this whole area of learning. And now there are other areas one could mention as well, something called machine learning, something called serious gaming, something called entertainment technology. Now it's not only cognitive psychology, but neurobiology. All of these are the areas that Carnegie Mellon has established as strong a group of researchers as any place there is, and B, researchers who work together. We're the only place that has departments in which artificial intelligence, machine learning specialists are combined with cognitive psychologists. This is the origin of the specifics that Jerry mentioned of where we have distinguished ourselves. This is where these things called cognitive tutors came from. This is how you embed artificial intelligence in a computer that interacts in a very customized way with students. The computer is infinitely patient. The computer also can keep track of that particular student, actually more effectively than a human teacher can. And the computer can be very attentive to the specifics of how that student is doing, the way that student is learning what they're learning, the way that student is not learning what they're not learning. And in a nutshell, it's more complicated, but in a nutshell, that's the heart of the direction that we have taken, which has absolutely nothing to say that the MOOCs that Jerry mentioned, which is taking advantage of recording lectures and making them available through the web and through other mechanisms, doesn't have things to be said for it, but our approach has been quite a bit different. Not anti that other approach, just we feel a lot better than that other approach. The approach of basing what you're doing on transmitting lectures. In the 1950s, you could go watch public television and you were watching online learning as there was a program that taught you how to paint a sunset or whatever. And that's not to be derogatory at all, it's just to say it's an old technology. It's coming out in new ways, doing new things, and our approach is slightly different. This approach, as Jerry mentioned, we call the science of learning. We put an emphasis on science, and we might extend it to say science and engineering of learning. We're a great engineering institution. We're great at figuring out how to build cognitive tutors, how to build open learning initiative courses, and we're very pragmatic and hands-on. So it's not only the science but it's also the reality of the engineering. That in a nutshell is our approach. Okay, so what is it that we see ourselves doing in that framework as we look ahead? I want to focus on two different domains. One is I want to focus on Carnegie Mellon and our campus. The first thing we want to do is to make sure that on our campus or on our campuses, we provide the very best way to make this a rich learning environment for students. To make sure that the best way to teach students the most effectively, the most efficaciously, even the quickest, is what we're going to specialize in. As we do that, there's going to be the possibility of taking professors and moving them out of being the lecturers and having that be the modal way the classes work. Some classes won't work that way. What we intend and hope will be the case is that the faculty who were teaching those courses, they're not having to do as much of that. They're still overseeing the integrity of the curriculum, but what will they be doing? They will be doing freshman seminars. They will be doing senior capstone experiences. They will be mentoring students in their research labs. They'll be advising students. There are so many things that teachers, faculty are still going to be needed for, but it's going to be liberating to have them be able to do those things and have the students still be able to take advantage of approaches in which technology even provides a better approach to learning. Now, this is not for all subjects. I am not saying every subject lends itself to this approach, but there are many subjects for which the approach that we've been talking about is a marvelous way to go. That's one of three things we hope to do for CMU. Second is we've been doing online learning. Talk about online learning. We've been doing online learning for an awfully long time. We're doing more and more of it. Not so much at the undergraduate level, where the personal community experience of the students is so critical, but at the professional master's level. And I think we do that more and more effectively than any place I know, and we're going to continue to do more of it. It's a way to reach out to different countries and different audiences that we otherwise would not have an opportunity. And thirdly, as Jerry mentioned, we have established a global network of campuses and programs, global, including what we do here in Silicon Valley, global in terms of what we do in other countries, that is unmatched. And we aspire to be a university that is a connected global network, and we're fast on our way. Be happy as we talk more, perhaps for questions, to kind of flesh that out. But let me talk about the other thing we hope that CMU does. We hope that we can take advantage of these talents and directions and have them affect not only Carnegie Mellon, but have them affect the 4,450 higher education institutions that are not like us. They're not worse than us. They're not, I mean, they're just different than us. The nature of the students is different, the nature of what they're trying to achieve, but their desire to have effective teaching with less resources remains there. In a sense, it's our business how to educate, how to understand how students learn. This is an attempt to move into the business of our business. That by going into the business of what we do, we can apply those approaches to what's happening in these other institutions and hopefully to have more impact, to help them, and to help ourselves even financially. Towards that end, we've set up a very unique structure. It consists of establishing companies. These companies are not spin-outs. We do a lot of spin-outs, and they're something we're very proud of. But these are spin-ins. These are subsidiaries of Carnegie Mellon. We own them. They're our companies. And our companies are going into the business of trying to change the world in the ways that we can. I want to mention just what a few of them are. One of them, Jerry mentioned, is an enterprise called Carnegie Learning. It deals with K through 12. it deals with math, it's in 10% of all U.S. public school districts. It's really quite an amazing thing, several 100,000 students at any given time. We have a video capture transmission company called Panopto. We now have 550 institutions of higher education that have signed up for Panopto. 380 of them are in the United States. It's the fastest growing video capture company out in that space. We have another company, pretty old actually, called Carnegie, that does teacher training, curriculum development, is active in many, many parts of the world, and is now starting to have a very big impact on its own. We have a company called Akatar, which is an online learning platform that other institutions can use and are beginning to use. We have a company called Clear Model, which teaches software engineering certification and gives certifications to most of the leading software producing companies throughout the globe. There's 500 multinational companies that are our clients. I'm not going to go into all of these in detail, although I'm very enthusiastic about them all. I just want to say it's a very unique structure that we've created. These things we hope to go out into the world, have a big impact, and be the vehicle that we change the world and maybe help ourselves. So in short, we've established ourselves in a very unique way that I think is going to impact higher education tremendously at the very time that higher education is going to be going through the biggest changes that it's gone through in decades and decades and perhaps even 400 or 500 years. We want to make sure that it leaves us in our Pittsburgh campus and our other campuses providing the best education that we can. And we want to get in the business of our business to see if we can change the world even outside Carnegie Mellon itself. So that in a nutshell is kind of how we're pointed, and I'll stop.
And that's the future of higher education. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Can't imagine there are any questions, but go right ahead. Dr. Frank.
So,
there's a mic there.
yeah. So back to Ballon's disease, why doesn't Amdahl's law apply? Because even if you cut, let's say pretend education is half the cost of running a university. So I take that to zero, I could best improve things by a factor of 2, and pretty quickly I'm back to where I was.
So whose law is that you said?
Amdahl's law applies to Amdahl applies to computers to speed up a program, and let's say you speed up half of it, the rest of it is still a problem.
So the answer I would give is these things scale forever. That is to say, if you find a method by which you have taken 7th or 8th graders and more effectively teaching them algebra, for example, or pre-algebra, you're going to be able to continue to add more and more students I'm
thinking of Carnegie Mellon.
Oh, with regard to Carnegie Mellon, your point is very well taken. That is to say, for us, we aren't going to plan, I don't think, to double or even increase at all the size of our undergraduates. This becomes simply a method that we can take advantage of the technology that we can, divert the students from, provide for the students alternative, the faculty who are going to focus on things they can focus on.
But I guess I was really thinking about tuition. I get to deal with that too. And why isn't this merely, let's imagine we make education, the teaching classes, perfectly efficient. We still have the rest of the university to run all the research, and that's driven by salaries and other things. Why does it, so we'll get a temporary stop in increasing tuition, maybe even a reduction, but we're done then, unless we find a way to make the other half of the university, not just assuming it's 50-50, equally, that we improve that, and that's the whole angle.
So I would have 2 answers. One is 50% ain't bad.
But it's temporary.
Well, yeah, give us a head start, and we started on this half. We'll work on the other 2. I mean, your point's well taken.
Well, except that, suppose that with the adoption of these technologies that we're talking about, the result was that you could produce a 3-year bachelor's degree, and without sacrificing much of the benefits from residential, the residential experience. And furthermore, that we are, that probably does result in a larger student. What I'm trying to get is the cost to the individual student, or the individual family. That would be a permanent, I think,
You can always start off with a hard question. We want these.
no, but you know what?
Well,
I'll leave it go. We'll come back to
yes,
this.
there's a lot, there's a lot more to running our universities and to tuition than merely, in all the universities we talk about, than merely, gee, the cost of running,
Yes.
computer science 101 or whatever. So many.
Well, just one quick question.
Alex? Yeah.
What percentage of, like, how self-sufficient is our research component right now? I'd imagine it's very self-sufficient because we've got a lot of sponsored research, right?
We're in 2 lines of business. We mainly research and education. We lose money in each. The more we do, the more we lose. It's a very bad business model. That's why your donations and gifts and are so critical.
It's actually true.
It's not the case, no matter how much money we get to do research, it doesn't cover the cost of research. And actually, the truth, it's also the case on the education front. So tuition, as high as it is, doesn't cover the whole cost of tuition. The research grants don't cover the total cost on the research front. Yeah, we don't make that for that.
Okay, I can't imagine, although my son did take online classes while he was in high school, simply because they ran out of options and he wanted to go on in certain areas. So how do you see this? I can imagine as a parent not being very driven to send my child away to school for the experience. I don't see it as just a learning experience. So how do you think the kids at the students at Carnegie Mellon see it? I'm really curious about the future purchasers, the people who are going to create the demand. Have you spoken to them, and what do you think it is besides what's going to make them a buck? How do they feel about it? What do they think about it? I'm curious. I have no idea.
So my view may not be shared by Rocky. This is just my view. But I think that there's so many different kinds of institutions in higher ed. And CMU is very fortunate to be in a set that is driven by getting a very good education, absolutely. But they're also driven by the prestige, by the selectivity, by the fact that they got into the #1 department in computer science or in drama or other things. And that they get a lot of their value from Carnegie Mellon through the experience of being, not so much the specifics of a given class, but by the network of friends, the network of associates who are going to be their network for their lives and stuff. And, pardon me?
Quality.
The quality in that regard.
Okay, so I mean, you can take the question, I met Carnegie Mellon students clearly, because that's what we're all here about and for. But of course, we all care on a greater level about students. And I'm just curious as what how you see this heading. I mean, you said it, but
Yeah, let
do you
me.
really think they're going to buy in? Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Now, first of all, there's a nuance that we need to introduce here. It's not online or not. In fact, we have found in our own use of these technologies that the best mix is a so-called hybrid approach,
Right.
where students are getting a lot of content from the technology-based education delivery, while they're also experiencing education in the classroom. And with those working together, it's a very powerful combination because the professor is tracking how they're doing with the online material, which, by the way, is also a game changer. The technology gives us, for the first time, real-time information on how students are learning or not on certain material, student by student. So that already is sort of hybrid approach. I think is one that's very attractive to students. And I think we'll see more of that. So there's the notion of the flipped classroom. That's the new phrase being used. With the idea that faculty members stop lecturing. Instead they say, go do module A online. I'm going to track how the class is doing, and you show up here at the usual time next week, and we'll talk about the problems. Or we'll take what you learn and go further and apply it. I think that sort of thing is very attractive. MIT is very much bought into this with their own online material. It's called edX, is their system. And their president, I think, articulated quite an interesting vision for how they see themselves using their own material. What he said was the typical MIT undergraduate is strongly motivated by project, by making things, designing things, which is true of CMU student marketing. And furthermore, this is this very small slice of students who are the most capable in the world. And they're quite able to master a great deal of material online without any help from anyone. Now, it's not everything, 17, 18, 19 years old, they need support. These are extremely capable students. So they're talking about like flipping the whole undergraduate experience. That is, the core of the interactive activity becomes project, which motivates the students to learn the stuff online. They're still getting a lot of faculty interaction, obviously a lot of interaction with each other. They're doing some of this already. An interesting footnote. So they're tracking their own students' use of this edX material. It turns out the peak hour of usage by MIT undergraduates is 2 to 3 a.m. for using this material, which sounds just right. So I think that if we do this right, that I'm confident we will, that it could be a really enriching factor to the undergraduate experience. But it's all playing out.
Jerry's emphasis on hybrid is exactly correct. In fact, MOOCs, online, they're not the terms we like. We like technology-enhanced hybrid courses, tech, for Carnegie Tech.
All the way in the back.
When I went to Carnegie Tech, the big thing was the Carnegie Plan of education. And if you learn the Carnegie Plan, there's no reason to ever have a change. The purpose, the thing there was learn the fundamentals, you derive your answers. It's different than the case method that Harvard used, and they were proud of it. Somehow or other, that got dropped by the wayside, and I don't think it should. That should
Oh,
exist.
no.
That,
It not-
anyhow, it should exist forever, in my opinion.
No, it's not dropped by the wayside at all. We can,
I never heard them use the word Carnegie Plan
well,
of education.
okay, the phrase isn't used anymore, but the content is absolutely there. I don't think you appreciate how.
Okay, can I say
how-
what I think?
Well, no, let me answer
Okay,
your
yeah.
point, because this is very important. I don't think you appreciate how transformative the Carnegie Plan was, not just for Carnegie Tech, but for all of higher
No,
ed.
not everybody adhered to that. They were using the case method. And they said,
Yeah.
no, don't learn the case method, learn the fundamentals. And can I say one thing? The English instructor I had was George Binda. He said, there's 3 things. When you communicate, keep it simple, clear, and concise. He says, don't say you conversed with your amanuensis, say you talked with your secretary. That's second. that stuck in my mind. To me, there's too much big words and stuff, and not enough fundamentals. My brother also went to Carnegie Tech, and he told his wife, what did I learn in Carnegie Tech? Problem solving. So I think there's still some fundamentals that can exist, and I don't think you got to invent a lot of new things.
Yeah,
Because some of the
again,
things that will exist forever.
So this is very important because the values of Carnegie Mellon, the core values of what we're all about today, are no different than the core values of Carnegie Tech when you were there. They've been updated to the 21st century, as you would hope they would be. But if you ask any alumnus in this group, what was the organizing principle for what you learned? I'll bet you 99% would say problem solving. And it has not changed at all. So the notion, at least your university, is not strayed from those core ideas with which we absolutely agree, you're absolutely right, and we're proud of it. We still have those same fundamental values.
Well, Jared, in particular, maybe you like have agreed to make the point Carnegie Mellon crash. What problem solving is problem solving.
So the vice president of engineering for Apple, the small little startup you might have heard of, just said, we employ Carnegie Mellon students because of their problem-solving abilities. So you should be proud of the fact that the Carnegie Plan is alive and well at your university. It's still very much what we do.
Provost Kamlet, always a pleasure to hear you talk. Being a very recent graduate of CMU, I've had the privilege of working with OLI in a classroom setting. And I'm very curious to hear, and we've touched upon it a little, about sort of the integration of OLI and those technologies within the classroom to sort of supplement what the professor is already teaching. In particular, Provost Kamlet, can you talk a little bit about the data that technologies like OLI can capture? So I'm kind of curious about what the feedback loop is for the students and how, the feedback that normally professors can give to the students can be supplemented by what OLI is providing.
Before you answer, what was your experience? What did you think?
I think it was sort of in the early stages, so I would say that there were both pros and cons to OLI, just from the fact that the way it was integrated in the classroom.
Which course did you take?
This is with Professor Stipe in statics and in a mechanical engineering course. And the way that Professor Stipe had used it was to introduce the concepts of whatever topic we were learning that week and come with questions into the classroom where he would address them. And I think that there were both pros and cons to that approach. It was better than reading just the standard textbook, that I would say for that for sure, because OLI provided you opportunities to really be able to sort of interface with the concepts. What I think OLI might not be as successful in is the idea of really, I guess you touched upon it, like we're addressing students' pain points. And so how can, even if it captures that data, what can we do for the student to be able to address those pain points? So, if there's a question answer Q&A session in the classroom, is that really being able to provide the right opportunity for that student to be able to learn that concept fully?
So part of your question was how is the data feedback loops? I'll say three things. Well, one of them is hopefully the professor benefits and the students benefit by seeing what they're struggling with. So the professor walks in and knows in advance a lot more about which specific pain points are there. Number two, OLI is just still being developed. And one of the things that the full cognitive tutors do is they embed enough artificial intelligence to be responsive to the student so it really can get at a more fine-grained level. And then three, hopefully, one sees after the whole class is done, and after it's done in many different settings to many different students, they'll say, this isn't working as well, and there'll be continuous quality improvement on the whole course as a whole. It's a good question, it's a fascinating question on how to take advantage of that continuous data feedback.
I have two questions. One is for Dr. Kamlet, and the second one will be for Dr. Cohon. So the first one's kicking off what Ed was saying in response to Dr. Kamlet's comment about Ball's law. I appreciate you bringing that up, because I imagine that's really the core of this issue. Do you notice a degree of take-up of the experimental delivery systems from the international campuses as opposed to the North American campuses? The experiments with different delivery systems? And then the second question is partly related to that for Dr. Cohon. To what degree do you feel that U.S. immigration policy presents a threat to Carnegie Mellon's U.S. campuses?
So in terms of different campuses taking up the new methodology, we hope so. We like to think that each campus is a greenfield and is open to new ways. At the Silicon Valley campus, it really pioneered an extensive learning by doing. In fact, everything was project-based, and you learned your concepts as you went. That wouldn't have worked in Pittsburgh, not because it was the wrong thing to do, but we're set in our ways. So I think there's generally, and we try to have there be an opportunity for pedagogical innovation that's not stultified at the new campuses.
U.S. immigration policy in some respects is terrible. It's not a particular threat to Carnegie Mellon, but it's a huge threat to America, in my view. If we really believe that innovation is the key to our future, it makes no sense whatsoever to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in many years to award a foreign student a PhD and then say, thank you very much, go home, which is exactly what we do. The demand for a Carnegie Mellon education from overseas is just exploding. And we could fill every one of our classes in every field at every level many times over from students from pick a country, any country. Just by the way, one little factoid to show you how powerful the demand is. 5 years ago, we had 400 students from China throughout the university at all levels. Now, 5 years later, we have 1,400, 400 to 1,400 in 5 years. And that's a little more than the national trend of national trends of growth. So we're getting fabulous, brilliant students from all over the world. As you know, under our immigration policy, our visa policies, they can stay for another 2 years or so. And if they're not lucky enough to get an H-1B visa, they go home. And it's the U.S. laws. And in terms of our own ability to get students, it's not a big problem. Jim, you got one more question?
No, I think the universities take a lot of credit, but if they're very selective who they admit, possibly the reason they're successful is they have a very special group of people that go there. That's going to make them look good, but maybe they're in the position where they can do that. But sometimes they take the credit for what's going on, and basically smart people will do well no matter where they are. The first job I had, a successful company said, the president said, if you went to college, forget it. If you didn't go to college, forget it. So that's kind of, I think that's very worthwhile thinking about.
That's a motto.
And he was successful.
So I think, I sense that we've probably reached the end here. See people nodding off, and I was looking at their watches. I want to thank you for being here. I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't introduce to you Dr. Candace Teal, who's, put your iPhone down for a minute. Just stand up so they can see you. This is Madam OLI. Candace is the leader of our OLI.
And she didn't come up to choke us once, so it couldn't have been.
Yeah, that's right. She didn't scream at us. Carnegie Mellon has achieved a great deal in recent years. We are fortunate to have gotten to where we are, but we're Carnegie Mellon. We're never satisfied. We have a long way to go. That we have gotten where we are is because, in large part, due to the support we receive from our alumni. And I thank you for that. I thank you personally, to many of you, for your personal support over my 16 years. And I'll thank you in advance for the support you're going to give Subra Suresh, 9th president of Carnegie Mellon, for your continued engagement with the university. Thank you very much for being here.